All right. Let's get this thing started here. MythVision Podcast is Fringe. Let's get started. Let's get started with my neon wood MythVision intro. We are MythVision. Obviously Fringe. No, I'm just kidding. What does that even mean? So I know some people are going to trickle in. This is a live. You guys can interact with me, hang out, if you will. I might have a guest join us as well. But let me give you a little background on, we're going to go into like what my journey's been, because MythVision Podcast is like a journey, but also like some of this idea, it almost seems like the term fringe is derogatory. And sometimes the simple term for fringe means they're on the outskirts. They're just not the consensus. There's stuff that's just not right there that the mainstream all buys into. And I had to make this live happen, not only to hang out with you guys and catch up and, of course, give you some heads up on what's coming. We have a lot of things coming from various scholars, and some are very mainstream. Critical scholars like Bart Ehrman, Dr. John J. Collins. Hopefully I can get some of these scientists that I've been emailing, and I email people all the time trying to get more people to come on the show. And so I had a constructive criticism actually given to me recently on an email about some of the scholars and the videos that I have interviewed in the past are obviously fringe. They're not consensus scholarship. I understand and I agree. I think they're absolutely right about that. However, I have been trying my damnedest to bring more consensus scholarship on, not because I'm closed off to consensus scholarship, because I'm open-minded and I'm actually trying to wonder, what if this scholar's wrong? What if one of my best friends, Dr. Robert Price, is incorrect? What if there was a man? And I really ask that sincerely. I don't just say this. I have no axe to grind to must be a mythicist type person. In fact, I think I've said this publicly for anyone who watches this. I, Derek, am agnostic on the question of whether there was a historical Jesus, though I lean historicist, and I'm a host. So I ask for everybody who's watching this, as you continue to watch and listen to me, think of Joe Rogan, for example. Joe Rogan has a serious platform. I mean, like, you could ask anyone, the most conservative of consensus scholars, to come on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they will, because the exposure, it's not worth passing up the opportunity to go on a show and get more exposure like that. Whereas someone like me on MythVision, it's a growing channel, it's getting there. They may not want to be associated with a channel that's interviewed people in the past that might have like a Roman provenance theory, or mythicism has been entertained, or various other views have come on the channel. And therefore they probably don't want to associate themselves with the channel that entertains these ideas. But if Joe Rogan were to ask them in a heartbeat, boom. I mean, think about it. Joe Rogan's interviewed Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock has some strange ideas, according to the consensus scholarship. I still enjoy listening to him, but there are various scholars he's brought on that are what you would consider fringe, on the outskirts of the scientific community. Yet, these amazing people, Sean Carroll, Lawrence Krauss, you name it, in the scientific community, are willing to come on there. Richard Dawkins, you name it. These guys, they come onto his channel. The exposure's worth it. Hopefully MythVision grows to a point where who cares who you've interviewed in the past? How does the host treat his guest? How does the host entertain the ideas that you bring forward? And is the audience learning from what is being presented on this channel? And I absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, The evidence is in the pudding. All you have to do is go in the comment section. Now, some people, well, I'll say this, most people have a position they start with. This is why I'm not a huge fan of debates. You go into a debate and you want your team to win. When I was a Christian, a hardcore fundamentalist Christian, I used to listen to William Lane Craig debate people like Richard Dawkins and all these other people. I went in like wanting to hear William kick butt, wanting to hear the Christian win the debate. I wanted that answer before I even clicked the button. And sometimes I would skip just to go back to the Christian arguments and like not even pay attention to the opposite side. I did this because it's cognitive dissonance. I was biased. I wanted Christianity to be true, and I only wanted to hear arguments of how it was true. Sometimes I would listen to the other side, but I would come into this. And so I ended up going from a fundamentalist Christian who was like a consensus fundamentalist Christian, somewhat. I mean, modern Protestantism. I ended up going into Presbyterian, Reformed Calvinist is what I was. And from there, I found out that I needed to study eschatology. I mean, up to this point, I was a premillennial dispensationalist. For those of you who don't know, the rapture was coming soon. I was having dreams that the end was going to happen any day now. And I felt guilty as a father. I was a young parent. Why are you bringing children into this world that's about to end? I mean, how horrible of a parent are you to birth children into this world? I didn't birth them. My wife thinks I claimed the right to birthing them because I was cherry red when she was pushing out my oldest son. But, you know, what kind of parent are you? And I had these dreams of a rapture that was going to happen. And I remember my pastor at the time, Andy Webb. Anyone who knows, you know, the PCA church, the Protestant PCA church, the Reformed, might know about a gentleman named Andy Webb. And it's right down the street from me. He said, you need to read this book, A Case for Amillennialism. So I studied amillennialism. I became an amillennialist because certain language sounded more of an allegory instead of literal, strict, fundamentalist approach. But then I didn't stop there. Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, various other scholars that were Protestants were saying, dude, partial preterism is where it's at. You could still remain Reformed and Calvinism's still true. So I went there. Then I heard of full preterism. I'll spare you guys the details. I ended up becoming a full preterist, which means I was a fringe believer. I was someone on the outskirts. Most of Christianity thinks Jesus is still coming in the future. The resurrection hasn't happened yet. We're waiting for certain prophecies to happen. That's like 99% of Christianity. And I ended up in this position where I was realizing either Jesus lied, which cannot happen. William Lane Craig cannot lose to an atheist, you know, that kind of bias, or something's wrong. And I needed to accept that he told the truth. Therefore, I went full preterist. Made me a fringe. I realized that most of the church had it wrong. That was the position I took. When I started to deconstruct, I started to look at things that were fringe. Guys, I admit this openly. I saw that show, Zeitgeist, talking about Jesus being parallel to all these other gods. Mind you, I'm a uneducated, not aware of this material at all, Christian-y, spiritual-minded man who finds this video that literally equates Jesus to Horus and Osiris and Dionysus, and you name it, the list goes on. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's what I needed at the moment, though maybe the information wasn't factually accurate. It's what I needed at the moment for me to go, oh my gosh, why is Jesus special and like everyone else is wrong? I needed something to catapult me in that direction. So it opened my mind enough to consider, well, like, what if all the religions are right? I didn't jump to the conclusion they're all wrong. I can't let go of my emotional connection to whatever that was that I thought was God. And as I started to study more, I started to come to more conclusions that were like academic in a way. Like, okay, I bumped into mythicist and I became a mythicist. I started to realize, like, hold on, Jesus couldn't have existed. I couldn't divorce the supernatural Christ from the historical Jesus. And therefore, like, there wasn't a guy running around doing all these things in the first century. So I threw away the whole history idea of Jesus, not really knowing anything about mythologized people. Not saying mythicists are wrong and not saying historicists are correct. I'm saying I didn't really know information like I'm learning now. And as I continued to study, I started to learn more. And I started picking up books by wonderful people like this, Bart Ehrman. This is obviously the quest for the historical Jesus, or merely the triumph of Christianity. Sorry, merely Christianity. C.S. Lewis. John J. Collins, right? This guy right here is about to be on the show Friday. These guys are what you call consensus scholarship. They're like not fringe, according to scholars. But ask a Christian, and Bart Ehrman is as liberal as you can get. Ask a mythicist, and he's as conservative as you could possibly be. So what does fringe even mean? Like 30 years ago, Abraham and Moses existed. Like consensus said, yeah, they existed. Maybe it was 40 years ago, approximately 30, 40 years ago. Now it's like, you're really the fringe if you think that Abraham was an actual historical guy. Like that's the fringe theory. So fringe is subjective. Real quick, let me read this. Give that thumbs up, folks. Thanks, Trude. I'm going to catch up with some of you guys here on your messages, but I have a guest joining us here. What's going on, brother?
Hey, how are you?
Is this Jesus, by the way? I'm trying to find out exactly who this is.
Maybe. Because anything's possible.
That is
Raptor Jesus.
That is true. So now I put the names up. Dr. Joshua Bowen is joining us right now. What's going on, brother?
Oh, not too much. Just getting some work done. Thought I'd free up a couple minutes during lunch.
Well, thanks for jumping in. You're the only guy I sent an invite to jump on for a second. And the reason I did, Dr. Josh, is you have a motto on your channel that I really appreciate. And that's getting good scholarship, like looking for good scholarship. And I'm obviously no PhD, haven't gone to any serious, college or anything, but I find that even if you go to these schools, you're going to find some views that are on the outskirts of what the majority think, even from serious scholars. And what I want to do is I want to educate as many people on various ideas. I want historicists who've never considered mythicism to at least consider looking at it. Not saying they need to jump to it, at least to understand what their critical stance is. Because typically a mythicist will say Jesus doesn't exist or was an angelic figure or something. And usually what I find with the scholarship version is it's not trustworthy. The text isn't really trustworthy. This is interpolated, that's interpolated, like so much interpolation that if there's anything that seems historical, it's either extremely late or it's been interpolated into Paul. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to trust that the text you have there is not accurate or has been put in there. I want people to kind of be able to talk about these ideas without getting upset or hurt, but it seems like a don't go there zone for a lot of scholars. And if they see the people I've interviewed, they're kind of hesitant to even want to join me on the program. What, as a scholar yourself, can you maybe elaborate like why that is, and just to help our audience who might be paying attention today?
Sure. I mean, I appreciate you referring to me as a scholar.
You are.
Well, I appreciate that.
You are a scholar.
So I think part of the problem, and I've been talking about this a little bit on Twitter recently, there's this with Christian apologists, it's where I normally see it. There is a consensus scholarship has almost become a bad thing. And it's almost become a bad thing in their eyes, unless, of course, that consensus agrees with them. Then it's really, really important, right? And absolutely essential. But so often I hear things like, well, consensus doesn't mean that it's right. Nobody's arguing that. Right? Nobody ever argues that. I think the reason that there's some hesitancy when you hear about or see somebody arguing what would be considered a fringe position is what it indicates. So let me back up.
Okay.
When you go to grad school, for example, there are just, let's take it in something, I don't want to say simple, but something straightforward. When I started to learn Sumerian, just like when you start learning Hebrew or Greek or any of these other languages, you learn vocabulary, right? There's just you get a list of vocabulary words and you memorize them. You don't question whether, you know, does Lugal really mean king? You know, is that really what that means? You just take it and you memorize it and you're done. You have this sort of base of knowledge that you operate from, and you learn history. And you say, okay, these are just sort of like the basic background historical events that took place, and everybody starts with this foundation upon which they build. Right? That's what, you know. When I went to Hopkins, those first 3 years, that's all it is just laying that foundation. Learn these basic languages, you know, learn the history of the periods, learn this archaeological, you know, methodology, and on this you will form your own fringe, right? Your own fringe theory in your dissertation.
Right.
Because you're going to be, in that sense, when you write a dissertation, very often you're either doing something new, working with a data set that nobody's worked with before, at least in a manner that you're going to work with it, or you're counteracting the consensus. You're going against it and saying, no, I actually think this is the case. The difference is you're doing it based on a specialization in that particular field. You've paid your dues, right? You've gone through the process of building this solid foundation and framework upon which to build. And I think that when people see that out here in social media, very often it's in context where people have not become experts in their fields and then gone on to argue for, you know, a quote unquote fringe position. They're just bucking against the system without having that underlying knowledge. There's more to say, I guess, but does that make sense? Have I made any sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I see it's tough because how do you get someone who doesn't respect scholarship I mean, like your foundation, like, let me just be devil's advocate here. What do you mean a strong foundation? Foundation in what? Now you would obviously say, well, we learned the languages. I mean, I know some French people. I've even had them jump on my live, which I'm not so sure I want to just give out an invite for everybody to just jump on lives anymore, because in the past, it just doesn't work out very well when you have random people coming in here just throwing things around. It's like a mud fight or a shit show, really. They're throwing dung at everybody. Like words, they mean anything. Like Israel is actually Isis Ra El, Israel. You know, like etymologically, if you talk to a scholar who knows the language, right, they're going to go, what? No, hold on. We got to start way back here to explain all the foundation of how language works and all this. But we jump to an English word that has words that sound like Isis, Ra, El. And so here we have three gods blended into one in the name Israel. And I started that way, Josh. I'm not going to deny it. I came out of like an uneducated kind of a Christian fringe group idea coming over and saying, wow, what if he didn't even exist? Talking about Jesus. I didn't even like know that the consensus scholarship outside of Christianity thought Abraham didn't exist. I didn't know any of this scholarship. I'm working backwards. My whole life has been this way. I had kids at like 17 turning 18. I'm becoming an adult over time, you know, but like I was supposed to be an adult when I had kids. So everything I do is a little bit backwards. But I'm seriously working on a foundation as we speak, continuously looking at consensus scholarship and testing these things. But one of the things I don't think is going to change is me all of a sudden finding out, let's say there was a guy, he might have been potentially a miracle worker type, even though there's tons of them out there, historically speaking. He may not have. I'm able to separate the Christ figure and the divine mythology that people believe from a man. I'm able to do that now. Whereas before I couldn't even see that being possible. And Dr. Price, I talked to him. He holds to a lot of theories he knows are French. And he tells me this. He's like, my wacky ideas. I love him for that because he's honest. But in person, I don't know if I think that's true, Dr. Price.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know. I'm very skeptical of being too skeptical. Because when you're so skeptical, everything becomes an interpolation. Everything becomes, you kind of almost do what Christians do and make everything fit your view, maybe. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm just saying. So I, the host, want to get mainstream ideas and fringe ideas like Dr. Dennis R. McDonald. He's a serious scholar who has theories that serious scholars that are in academia say is fringe. He does. But the guy's awesome. I got to entertain him. I got to have him come on. I love what he's saying. I think he's on to something. I think he's telling something that I think is accurate, even though it's not consensus. And that's an honest opinion of mine. Real quick. Ricky Green.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. $100 super chat. Dang, man. Thank you so much. Just catching this. This is the most diverse and sane podcast on religion on the entire internet. Rational, thoughtful, and backed up with scholarship. Keep it up, brother. Thank you so much, Ricky. I really appreciate that super chat, man. It's an enormous gift to MythVision and keeps me going, motivates me, man. Thank you. And Dr. Josh, of course, he has nothing but scholarship on his channel too. But you delve more than just out in the Jesus context. You're getting into like ancient Sumerian and Akkadian text and things. Like, I love that about you. So I'm sorry I rambled, man. I got to share this.
No, but I mean, so, I don't think I've given this example here, but I remember I was teaching Greek my last year at seminary, and I was filling in for a friend of mine. I was teaching the Hebrew course, and he was teaching the Greek course, and he had to do something. So he asked me to run his midterm study class. And so I got in there a little early, and I was putting, what I was going to cover with the class up on the board. And there were two guys sitting in the front. Now, I don't know if you've known a lot of seminary students, but seminary students, particularly in their early years in seminary, are notoriously arrogant pricks, right? They just think they know everything. There, bro.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, and I can say that with full confidence because I was one of them. And I remember this. So this is a first semester Greek class, right? First semester Greek class. They know some nouns, they know how to parse some verbs. They know a little bit of syntax, right? They're working their way through, Bill Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek, so they know nothing, right? They just this little bit. And we've all been there. And I was writing some paradigm up on the board. And I heard these two guys talking, and the conversation went something like this. The one guy said, you see here, the Greek in Romans chapter 9 clearly shows that Paul was arguing for predestination. The Greek is so clear here. That's what that means. And the other guy said, you're crazy. That's not what the Greek says at all. The Greek is very clear that this Armenian position is, more in line. The Greek is very clear about that. And I didn't, but I wanted to turn around and say, shut the fuck up, the two of you. You all don't know anything yet. Just sit there, take your 3 years of Greek and learn these languages. And because you have no idea what the Greek is saying right now. You don't know enough to know, right? And we've all been there. We all get really excited about these languages. We all get really excited about things that we're learning, but we have to have this patience to be able to say, okay, we can't just dive into this. And know everything. It's not how it works and how learning works. And I think that so many people, when they, have been in a field for a while and they come to social media platforms, they get immediately turned off because that's who they see. They see that first year seminary student that's read an article, that's read a book, that's come and from that has come up with some harebrained theory, on why it is that, this Pharaoh hardened his heart, right? Or God, they've solved this paradigm. They know, who was the Pharaoh of the Exodus. They know all this stuff. And I think that scholars, I don't have what they're thinking is, I don't have the time to teach you 3 years of coursework for you to realize that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And that's what it would take. I can't jam that 3 years of coursework into your head right now. And that's why I think consensus scholarship is such an important thing here on social media, because whether, I had a conversation recently, whether a scholar, an Old Testament Pentateuchal specialist, holds to the supplementary hypothesis of Pentateuchal formation or to the neo-documentary hypothesis, it doesn't matter. The consensus view is that one person didn't write this thing. And that's the important bit that Moses didn't write this thing. Mm-hmm. Now, how it formed, whether there were 4 independent sources and a later editor, or the fourth editor is the one that put the 4th source together, or whether you have supplementary layers, all that stuff is really important later on down the road. But you have to get the basics first. And people so often want to jump over the basics and try to go to this, these more detailed, these more complex, and they don't understand the arguments. They don't understand the papers, but they're making these claims and citing these scholars and not really knowing what these scholars are really saying. And I think it just gets frustrating because it would take so much and I'll shut up, but it would take so much for someone who's a specialist in the field to lead someone, particularly an arrogant someone who thinks they already know it all, to take them through this and say, look, you're going to have to trust me for a little bit until we get to where we're going. Dude. And you can look back and say, yes, you were right about, this basic stuff. That's what I think is going on.
So first off, fans, thank you so much. Dave Harden, $50 super chat. You rock, brother. All these super chats, your name's in the Lamb's Book of Life. I don't care what scholars say. I have direct access to that shit, and you're in there, man. You're like at the top of the list. You're going to get in before everyone else. Don't worry.
I can vouch for that.
You studied as a scholar.
I mean, it's not my field. It's not my field, but.
No, but you've heard it from all the other big names. I know. I'm only half the man Ricky is. Keep up the great work, brother. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. And look, my goal, man, is to educate people on these ideas. Because, Dr. Josh, I have to tell you what I keep calling you Dr. Josh. That's going to come naturally. We're on the phone. I'm like, hey, Josh, so check it out. We're in front of the public. So this is going to come natural. I was raised in the South. So yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. That's things that I did. Okay. It's just going to come. So let me keep that $50 super chat up, man. I love bragging on people who help out. Seriously. So first things first, do you remember when I was like researching these guys, Israel only? Mm-hmm. And I called you and I'm like, look, the reason I called you is because you're a scholar and you know scholars and you've read lots of material, or at least can steer me in the right direction to talk to other serious scholars. And the reason for everyone who's watched is like, why are you even entertaining these guys? Why are you even like looking into these guys? They were connected to the same group of people, full preterist, that I came out of Christianity from. That's the teaching that Jesus did come back in the first century, all that, yada, yada, yada. I'll spare you the details. Well, they believe that Paul's ethne, Paul's Gentiles, are literal Abrahamic descendants. They're uncircumcised Israelites that are called Gentiles. So I went into this deep exploration on scholarship because I don't know a thing about Greek. I don't know a thing about Hebrew. I don't know a thing about Aramaic. In fact, I don't even know the cultural surrounding of the first century, the various Judaism sects that were going on. Like, I really don't know, where does this all fit? Is Christianity in the vein of a messianic, like kind of a xenophobic potential Qumran sect mixed with a mystery cult? Is it Hellenistic? Is it more Hellenistic? All these things I ask, but I don't even know what the term Gentiles ultimately means other than looking to a dictionary and trying to understand. But why do they come to that conclusion? So what I'm doing today is I'm trying to find out what the consensus thinks over against why someone doesn't agree with consensus. That means I will explore fringe topics and theories. I will ask Dr. Price, who is my close buddy, very, very close friend. I mean, he's like a dad to me. I love his wife to death. I call them mom and dad when I go to their house. Like, That's just our relationship. I'm like, hey, Dad, is it cool? I come over tomorrow? Yeah. All right, I'll let Mom know. I call his wife, and that's just how we are. But I want to know why, because I don't have all the answers. And I mean, I used to think that, I'm on to something. And man, I got to admit, here's something that I've done in the past. And those who've watched MythVision for a long time, this gentleman right here, Bart Ehrman, okay, I have not treated this guy the way that he should have been treated. Honestly, like there are mythicists who think he's an undercover Christian. They do the same thing with people like Tim O'Neill. And I know that Tim O'Neill he's not a PhD or anything, but he like debates mythicists and stuff. It's historyforatheist.com. But like, I guess they clash, he's a guy, they're guys, we got to be right. You're wrong. But like, I never really respected him the way I should have, because I honestly had very little grasp on any of this scholarship. And I went and studied and looked at people like Audio Fear, Ishai Rosenzweig on the Gentiles, the birth of the Goy. My good friend Stephen Nelson always creates charts, but he knows Greek. Like he's not like a first year student on Greek. He knows Greek really well. And he was like, dude, the way they're saying Paul's Gentiles, like the term Gentiles doesn't have any ethnic potential. Like later in Second Temple Judaism, almost always Gentiles refer to other people than Israelites. So to find Gentiles constantly being used in Paul to mean Israelites, it kept running contrary to my thinking. So I'm like, I kept asking these Israel-only proponents who are fringe, so is the whole full preterist camp, why aren't you looking at the scholars? Jason Staples is writing on this. Paula Fredrickson's writing on this. Like other people are already dealing with this topic. Why aren't you at least tackling the big heads who are talking about this topic first and then arguing why your view's right? They don't write anything. They're never like putting their thesis out there. And people are like, why are you wasting your time? That's a good question. I got caught up in this discussion for a while, but I thought it would be noteworthy to do this. It's kind of competitive, and I felt like I needed to thrive to learn this to see what the heck. Am I wrong? And this small group of individuals, like 25 people on planet Earth are right. Every other scholar who knows the languages is wrong. Well, that's a good example of what you're describing here. And I don't want to be the 25 individuals who has their heads so far up their ass that they can't even consider being wrong. They read an English version and they go, well, Paul said our forefathers traveled through the Red Sea, and he's speaking to Gentiles. That means the Gentiles must be descendants of Abraham, because why would he say that our fathers passed through the Red Sea? That means they must be Israelites. That's the kind of like logical conclusion these Israel-only proponents do. Well, what about all the scholars? How do they treat this and why? And that's why I do what I do now, and trying to consider what you guys bring to the table.
I think a rough analogy to this would be, I grew up working in my father's family construction business. And if somebody came out to the site and you could tell they'd never been around, building the house, and they came up to me and they said, wooden shingles are better. I read this article, and you should be really putting some wooden shingles up there, because they were talking about how in this particular style, you should. And I would just say, so you're out here to learn how to build a house, right? You're here to work with me and learn how to build a house, and you're telling me about what kind of shingles. We haven't poured the footers yet, right? Excavator, the backhoe hadn't put its bucket down. Like, whoa, buddy. As my grandfather used to say, hold or newt. I don't know what that means, but it means like slow down or stop. But you're discussing, you don't understand that the person doesn't understand what shingles are, what they do, the different types of shingles, different weather pattern. Different, what type of environment the house is being built in. So there are lots of factors, but they read an article, right? On the internet, and now they're gonna tell me what kind of shingles I should be using. And what I want to say to them is, look, I can sit here and explain to you for the next hour and a half why it is that here in this part of the country we're going to use this type of shingle. But the reality is, if you really want to know, just work with me for a while, right? Let me show you how a house goes together. Because by the time we get to the roof, you'll understand all this stuff. It'll be so much clearer. Why are we starting at the end? You need to get all these basics down. So I think when people look, when scholars look out in these types of on these platforms or in these parts of social media, and they see people arguing about the shingles, they just say, "Oh my God, I don't want to have anything to do with this because it's going to take me so long, and I don't even think I'm going to be able to do it because these people." You can't tell them a secret because they already know it, right? You can't tell them anything. They already know the answer. And so people like that. And I think this leads to the other problem. And for me, I see it and I wrestle with it. I feel like every day, and that is the throw it up against the wall until it sticks apologetics, right? And I think you and I have probably talked about this before, but somebody who's a non-specialist who comes up with a new theory, a new idea. I see it in slavery all the time, right? When I talk about slavery in the Hebrew Bible, people will say, well, actually Leviticus 25:44-46 doesn't talk about chattel slaves. It's not talking about foreigners. It's talking about this, right? And they'll cite some scholar completely out of context that they've Googled. And I have to go, okay, let me explain how that doesn't work. So I take 30, 40 minutes, walk them through it. And then they go, yeah, well, what about this? And they throw another thing out. And you go, oh, okay, right, so here's why that doesn't work. And let's go through it. Take another 30 minutes, walk them through it. He said, does that make sense? Like, do you trust me now? Like, do you trust all these scholars that are saying this? Like, well, what about this? And eventually it's like, there's nothing that I can say that will keep you from coming up with another thing to throw up against the wall. And so, I mean, it really does. It takes, I know that it did for me when I was in that position. I'm glad that people did take the time to deal with my throwing shit up against the wall. When I was that arrogant prick that knew everything. But it is difficult, and I think a lot of scholars, one, don't have the time, but two, don't have the patience, and I can't blame them to deal with, having to time and again go, no, that doesn't work. If you had just the basic knowledge of the field, you wouldn't come up with this idea, but you don't, so I have to explain it again, and you don't trust my answer anyway. So anyway, hope that made some sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, admittedly, I have held to very fringe concepts in various ways. It's not just have I been a mythicist. Mythicism, look, I know serious scholars that I don't necessarily follow their full conclusions. I do consider their skepticism of the text that we have. And I understand why someone draws those conclusions, which is why I am agnostic in a sense, because could I be wrong? And them being as skeptical as they are of what we have and trusting what we have, could they be right about that? Yeah, they could potentially. There is that potential there. Whereas for me, what makes the simplest of the overarching theme of what I see is leaning in the direction that there was a guy. I don't close my mind at all to the idea. I mean, I visit Dr. Price's house every week and listen to these ideas and his thought on this over and over. I know I'm not going to close the door. This, for example, I'm not going to cut scholars who may have this fringe idea. By the way, they are scholars. They may have a fringe idea on things. I'm not going to cut them out just so I can incorporate more mainstream critical scholars. I do want people to find out, look, Derek is not that guy. He's not someone who's closed off to this. Derek is someone who really is going to take what you present, the evidence you're giving, and really consider what you're saying. Because, dude, I'm being more and more like entertained by John J. Collins's work in a way that I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about on a whole nother level. Like, he's the messiah of apocalyptic literature. Like, this guy's that good.
I do not disagree.
So real quick, hold on. Someone asked if I have a, they said, do you have a Venmo? I do have a Venmo. It's in the description of this video. If you're trying to help out, you can do that. Let me just post a comment here and make sure that they have access to that. It is in the description, though. If you guys are trying to donate, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay, so you got to run soon, dude. Look, I want you to make a final statement then, because if you've got to go, you've got to go. But what do you think about MythVision Podcast? And be honest. I know you probably thought, oh, when you first saw this, like, what is he, like, what are you doing? Like,
what I love about this show, one, is your boldness. I was telling Megan about this the other day. I said, we have to start emailing people and seeing if they'll come on the channel, because like Derek just, I think he emailed the president at one point and said, you want to come on my podcast? And the thing is, it works, right? You have the ability to get people on here. And I think that's amazing. And I really admire you for it, frankly.
Thank you.
Because I still have quite a bit of, I was in the Air Force for 10 years. And so when I think about people like John Collins, I think about the general, and I'm the lieutenant, and I'm not going to bother the general in his office. And you don't mind bothering him. And I don't think he minds being bothered. And I have to pick up a little more of that. But the thing that tells me about you is, getting John Collins on this show, for example, or getting Bart Ehrman on, that's not easy. And what I mean by that is not that it's not easy to get them to come on. It's not easy to be prepared for them to come on. And, that book that you keep holding up, The Apocalyptic Imagination, like, that's not an easy read. You don't lie down in bed and, on a Saturday afternoon and, hey, let me just kind of, some nice easy read. That's deep, right? You read through his book, The Scepter and the Star. It's very, very difficult in the sense that there's a lot of information, and in order to do an effective interview with him, I think you have to know that book on apocalyptic genre. And so I admire that about you, because you're taking this seriously, and you're taking scholarship seriously, and I really appreciate it. So I think it's a fantastic podcast. I think it's very wise to keep an open mind about all of these things. I can definitely understand from like a Bart Ehrman perspective. He's had to deal with, what he would definitely consider fringe views for so long that I think he's probably tired of doing it. And I totally understand his sentiment. We all, I think, have those, all of us, have those types of things that we feel like we've addressed so many times that keep coming back up. But I think it's important, the position that you're in, to keep that open mind and to follow the evidence. But I do think that in ensuring, here's what I would say to the audience, to you, to anybody listening, to myself: if you're going to go against what the vast majority of specialists and experts in a particular field say about a particular topic, have a damn good reason why. And I find that it's very difficult to have a damn good reason why unless you're trained in that field. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I do find that it's difficult. And so you're either having to rely on somebody else's work who's trained in that field, or you're coming up with this shit on your own. And that's dangerous, the latter.
Right.
And so if you are, for example, I'll give one quick example.
Please.
I hear a lot of people relying on John Walton in their analysis of the book of Genesis, right? John Walton has an interesting idea about the use of the Hebrew word bara in Genesis 1 and what that means in its ancient Near Eastern context. And he's been heavily criticized by people like Dennis Pardee on that. And so I disagree with his position. But there are still people that, and John Walton's obviously a very intelligent man. But if you're going to go with his interpretations of some of these things that are more nuanced, but, not as widely held, own that and say, look, this is not my idea. And this is John Walton's idea, and John Walton's a very good scholar. And so I agree with him on this, though I don't know that I'm, trained enough to have my, be able to fully understand what it is that he's saying or why he's arguing it. But this is what I'm arguing, and this is why I think it works. But hey, I could be wrong, because look, everybody disagrees with him. Like, if you take that posture, I don't think anybody in academia will have a problem with you. I think it's when people go, no, bara means this. It means to organize and to set things in place. That's what it means. You don't know Hebrew. Yeah, okay. I mean, I get it. I get why you say that. But, so, yeah, that's why I think for most of us, if you're an atheist or a skeptic, an agnostic, and you're out here trying to engage with Christian apologists, I think step one is get the basics, right? Really understand the basics. Because if you understand the basics, so many of these arguments fall apart on their face, because you understand that foundation and you go, the Exodus couldn't have happened then, because this is what we know historically, for example, from like the Amarna period. We know what was going on in Canaan, so it couldn't have happened then, right? And you're not, to borrow some New Testament, you're not swayed, blown about by every wind of doctrine, right?
Right.
Okay, sorry.
Well, real quick, Constellation Pegasus, thank you for the super chat, my friend. We are not Fringe. We are learning information the church has denied us. Keep up the good work, Derek. It's nice to live in the 21st century.
Yeah, no
Thank
doubt.
you, my friend. I have to say for everyone, before you go, Josh, because I know you got to go, we're going to be doing something, fingers crossed, everybody. And you guys, obviously, who help support us by becoming Patreon, all that stuff, like, you make this possible. So I want to say thank you. Dr. Josh, thank you for the compliments, too. You got me a little bit emotional there, because I do take this serious. I really love doing this. This is a passion. I love doing this full time. Like, I want to know more. I know that I don't know so much. I know that just from this book. I've read more than halfway of this book, and like, I'm barely understanding the crumbs that fall off the table that he's describing here.
We're using all kinds of New Testament imagery here.
I know, right? I love doing that, because, someone's going to go, dude, this guy's read the Bible a couple of times, But I wanted to say for everybody, there's this new documentary that came out by Inspiring Philosophy, Michael Jones, The Exodus Rediscovered or something. And well documented, like a really, really well done production. It's a great video in terms of quality, but we're going to have, fingers crossed, Dr. Josh, I know I'm leaning on you to get this Egyptologist to come on. I've emailed Dr. Finkelstein.
Right. Okay.
And Israel Finkelstein, I'm waiting for him to, am I saying that right? Is it Finkelstein?
Yeah.
Finkelstein. I'm waiting for him to respond back, because I want to deal with the Exodus. Did it even happen? What is the archaeological data? And he's really good on this stuff. So fingers crossed we can get him for a show coming up. I really appreciate the bold, claims. And I saw some comments down there. Thank you, everyone who's watching, who's saying, that I'm pretty humble, even though I am bold. Look, I've dealt with addiction and stuff like that. Like, I've had my ass kicked in life pretty good. And like, I try to remain humble, because if I thought I had all the answers, man, I really look back to the whole mindset I had as a Christian, where I was right, everyone was wrong. And I think that did play a huge part in my stubbornness that caused me to continue in the path and keep doing the same things in my life, which were harming me in addiction. And then, of course, religiously too. No one wanted to hang out with me. All I wanted to do is tell them how they're wrong. And I was a Calvinist, and predestination's true. And I was one of those guys. And so now today it's like, I love hearing people who have a case that they think they're right about, even if it is Fringe. But I don't believe it. I try to believe it for the sake of listening and receiving it. I don't receive it with extreme criticism until I hear something absurd. Like, I was interviewing the guy who followed that Jesus guy from Australia, and he told me schizophrenia is not true. Those are spirits in the spirit realm talking in their head, and that he wants to take people off their medicine. I was nice to him, but I personally, from this field of research and what I've done in mental health, like that is the worst thing someone can do is stop talking to the docs, stop taking your schizophrenia medication. Those are spirits talking to you in your head. That to me, man, I'm against that. Like, I'm so not cool with that kind of stuff. So anyway, I don't know why I rabbit trailed there, but we're going to be doing that show. And I'd hope we can get this Egyptologist to come on and debunk some of the things that are mentioned there and also say, hey, some of this is true. But Michael Jones did some really careful things in that video. He wasn't dogmatic. He was but he was leaning. His language was pushing you that way. But if you tried to press him, you go, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's how slick he was in that documentary on trying to push stuff. The fact that there were lambs or 1-year-old animals buried in some type of burial, therefore that was a Passover lamb ceremony. Like 500 years before like Paleo Hebrew comes on the scene. And like, how'd this story exist and survive? Like, dude, it's so interesting. I can't wait to take some jabs at that and have you join me.
Yeah, hopefully Dr. Bryson will be able to come. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I've only seen the first 15 or 20 minutes of the documentary, so I'll have to.
Same here. I didn't watch the whole thing. I got to watch that interview you did with her on this topic before I actually go to watch that video with him to prep for what we're going to do on the show, because I'd like to dissect the topic he discusses on that show. Sad thing is, we knock down this. Let's say we knock this documentary down. Cool. There's just going to be 50 more Christian apologists and Jewish apologists that are just going to run to a different era or try to make a case under a different pharaoh.
Well, see, I think this is sort of my point. You're hitting it. And that is that, my grandfather used to always say to me, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere, but the fool can ask more questions than the wisest man can ever answer. And I don't mean to say that Christian apologists are fools. That's not what I'm saying. But, that you can always throw up a challenge. It doesn't take a lot of expertise to throw up a possibility. It takes the expertise to show how that's not a legitimate possibility, which gets taxing, I think, on Egyptologists and, biblical scholars. And hopefully, I've got that book coming out soon. Megan just finished her read through, and she's starting her edits, which hopefully shouldn't take more than a week. And then we'll be into the last phase before publication. So, but that's, that book is the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. It should have it's got a lot of these sort of basic, what's the story of the Old Testament? We've talked about it, but hopefully that'll be useful for just this purpose, to sort of lay that groundwork. Because if you understand the Amarna period, for example, or if you understand the basics of the archaeology of the late Bronze Age and the Iron Age in Canaan, it becomes very difficult to wedge a conquest of 2.5 million Israelites, and it doesn't work. Again, to quote William Deaver, or paraphrase him anyway, 1 out of 38 sites showing conquest isn't really all that great. 1 out of 38 fitting doesn't really work. So, and people don't all agree about Hatzor. So,
I totally agree. Are we still talking to Dr. Josh, or is this Ken Hovind? Because I kind of thought I didn't know. I was trying to find out. Like, Ken Hovind. I don't know. Ken? Is that you?
Oh wait, I mean, I suppose that sometimes I hang out with with Doctor Josh, but I mean, what is he actually a doctor of? Okay, but certainly he doesn't understand about otters and water. Okay, so I'm here to help.
Dude, look, um, Godless Engineer's intro on the Wells penis thing, you got to admit was hilarious. You've heard that, right? The intro that he had?
Uh,
He had an intro that was going to his live, and he was debating Kent Hovind. And Kent Hovind, I don't know why he said this, but he's like, well, his penis is, I can't remember how long it was or something. And he's like, I'm sorry, Kent, I couldn't, you broke out. What did you say? He goes, I didn't break out. What are you, a pervert or something?
yeah, I did hear that.
I just thought that was hilarious. So I knew this was actually, are you like split personality? Are you part Kent Hovind, part
Yes.
Dr. Joshua Bond? Okay.
I mean, that's it. You got it.
Okay. I'm learning, dude. Scholarship has led me in this direction. One thing before you go, I just want to make a comment that I think right before you stopped, communicating what you were saying about this, one area they can show maybe archaeology might line up with something biblical, but 38 others don't or whatever. And it might, not saying it does, but it could. I think what mythicists are trying to do, Dr. Bowen, is they're trying to say when Christians, for sure, we know, have fabricated, sorry, I don't know where I was coming, fabricated so many things to kind of bolster their claims. I think what could be potentially authentic becomes potentially interpolation or fabrication or later. And so skepticism becomes a growing thing to a point where it's not trustworthy. Like Dr. Price doesn't even think the 7 Pauline epistles are authentic.
Oh, wow.
So, as much as there's fragments in the consensus on scholarship, and mythicists love pointing that out, it's easy to go to the mythicist scholarship too and say, hey, look, they can't even agree. Like Dr. Carrier and Dr. Price cannot even find a common ground on Pauline epistles when it comes to the dating of when these books came. And I just like, everyone's going to have these differences. So I just wanted to say, I think that whereas Christians will kind of do the Jim Carrey statement at the end of Dumb and Dumber, so you're telling me there's a chance.
It's
you know what I mean?
True. Oh my God, I have to use that. Oh, that's so exactly what it is.
There's a chance. That is, you know what I mean?
That's amazing.
I feel like maybe a lot of the skeptics out there are looking at mainstream scholarship and going, yeah, you guys sound like you're saying there's a chance that this could be authentic.
So I have to just, Joel Baden is got to be one of my favorite people. And of course, if you haven't read his book on the composition of the Pentateuch, you should go out and get it and read it. It's brilliant. But he opens his book with Genesis 37 and the Joseph story. And I know we've talked about this, but maybe just for the audience's sake.
Yeah.
If you're ever in a discussion with someone who believes in a single authorship of the Pentateuch, take them to Genesis 37 and ask them, how did Joseph get to Egypt? Because if you read through the story, did the Midianites take him down? Did the Ishmaelites take him down? Who sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites? Who sold him down to Egypt? It's all a cluster, right? But there is an interpretation. I can't remember who made it. And you have 2 different traditions, right? In one tradition, Joseph is being pulled out of the pit by the Midianites and sold down in Egypt, and then in another one, the brothers are selling him to the Ishmaelites. But because those traditions are either layered together or they're put together in 2 different sources, however you want to do that. They're in the canonical form, it doesn't make sense. And so somebody had to make the argument that the brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Midianites, who then sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites, who then went down to Egypt, came across the Midianites that had sold him, and sold them back to the Midianites in Egypt. And then the Midianites turned and sold Joseph to Potiphar, right? And that is So you're telling me there's a chance?
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah. I think it's hilarious, though. I mean, there's a wrestle between the Septuagint and the Masoretic. I mean, like, there's a million things we can bring up, Dr. Josh, that are just great points that you got. Okay, who are you going to go with? It sounds like when it's useful, they'll use the Masoretic, and then when it's not, they argue how the Masoretic is inferior for the LXX is where it's at, but then you find problems with that, and you're like, and they just, it's like whatever works for them. And so that's why I remain just kind of a skeptic. I remain someone who is looking critically at this. I just, I don't have I don't want to try and harmonize everything. I'll play it out in my head. I'll do what you just did and realize, come on.
Right.
What are the odds? Like,
what are the odds?
You're telling me there's 1 in a million? So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, I just think that's hilarious. I wanted to use that at the beginning of my clip on the Israel only thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, dude, I didn't. I could have gone like on and on just clowning the whole thing, but I didn't. So. Everybody, tell Dr. Josh. See you later, Dr. Josh. I know you got to go,
very
man.
Much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for jumping on. Go over to Digital Hammurabi. Make sure you guys subscribe, of course. And we're going to be doing some more stuff with him on the channel for sure. For sure.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
You too. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you got Dr. Joshua Bowen came on. Of course, he has scholarship on his channel all the time. And I got to catch up with you guys. I've been paying attention to him and having a fun time. Digital Gnosis, what's up? It says, hey, Fringe, MythVision Podcast. Yeah, the whole topic is this a Fringe channel? Well, we do entertain Fringe theories. I myself entertain them. Doesn't mean I am someone who believes them, but I also am realizing the importance of at least trying to consider what the scholarship says on the topic. I just don't run to like a brain surgeon because my granny right now, and I'm not trying to be emotional. This is a real situation. My granny, we found out, has stage 4 cancer and she has a brain tumor, but I'm not going to go and here she has a brain cancer and then go to some witch doctor who says herbal remedies will reverse the tumor and potentially save her life, get her off all the medication that the doctors at the hospitals are going to give her. I'm not going to do that. I want to find out, I need to know what's going on, but I'm not a specialist on the brain. I don't understand those things. And so I kind of have to have faith in what people are taught in these things and they're studying and whatnot and their expertise is until I myself at least get my feet wet in that area to try and understand. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I've done nothing but look at Fringe things for a long time. And as you guys see, I'm constantly bringing the mainstream critical scholarship to the front and seeing why they think differently. And some of this stuff is just mind blowing. Like, there's a lot that John J. Collins has in common with Dr. Price in agreement. I've had Russell Gamirkin. Russell Gamirkin has a Fringe idea in mainstream scholarship. He starts with a minimalist approach on the dating of the Old Testament. The Septuagint, we all would say, is dating around 270, 273 BC. He believes the Hebrew Bible that it was translated from is only a few years prior to that. I entertain this. I want to know why. And I want to know why the other scholars say, I'm sorry, no, we're going to go further back and give me your reasons. I want to know why. I want to hear both sides. And if that's going to cause someone to say, I don't want to come on the channel, or I'm not interested, I don't want to be affiliated because you've interviewed a guy named Joe Schmo and Joe Schmo believes in these ideas, sorry, I'm not changing that. I am going to keep trying to bring more critical scholars and mainstream scholars on the show. Dude, we're about to interview Dr. Bart Ehrman May the 5th. And I'm super excited about that because we're going to touch on some Christian apologetic stuff. There's just so much I really want to try and cover in that window of time. John J. Collins comes on this Friday, and I'm constantly emailing people. In fact, he gave me the idea, William Deaver. I'm going to try and email William Deaver after we get off this live and see if I can't get him to come on and join me. And so that'll be interesting. Joel Pearson, anyone know Gamirkan's credentials? I don't think he's PhD at all, actually. He's not. I know Thomas L. Thompson does, obviously looks at him as someone who is writing serious research here, and I do too. I think he's onto some stuff. But I don't know the field, so I can't pretend like he's right. And that's something that happened to me, Joel, when I got into this. And I was at the beginning, I was looking at, all these theories, Joseph Atwell, the various views that are out there. Like I was picking up all these ideas, didn't know jack diddly squat when it came about the mainstream consensus critical scholarship on these things. And now I'm kind of progressively working in that direction to learn and educate myself so that everyone who watches the channel knows a little bit about all this stuff. That's what I'm trying to do. All right, let me see. Remember Coast to Coast? That was all aliens and junk. That's true. I actually thought about that show yesterday, and I was like, that's weird. You bring that up. But they're a pretty big one, so let me see. Trying to catch up. Aaron D, what's up? I love this podcast. It provides endless entertainment and food for thought. It's also caused me to spend too much money on books, and so thanks for that. You're welcome on the books thing for sure. I'm glad that this has helped you a lot, and I'm going to keep trying to do that. So, guys, you guys are encouraging me. I ask the 133 people watching this, or that's combining Facebook, of course, hit the like button, share this out there, get more people acquainted with MythVision. But also, if you have a scholar in mind, you can reach out. If you find a way to contact them, whisper in their ear. MythVision Podcast is a great show. Be awesome to see you come and have a discussion with the host, Derek Lambert, on his channel. And you can reach out and try and make that connection happen between me and them. I will be vetting and screening, of course, because there are some people love you to death. You're fans of MythVision, but there are some ideas I'm just not interested in interviewing, or it's just too far out there. I love you, but there's some stuff that I just don't find interesting on that level personally. But that's okay. I'm willing to look and consider it. And most of you guys who have recommendation have good ideas. So I just say that because some people might have something like, hey, I would like for you to entertain flat earth on your channel. I'm not interested in doing such a thing personally. So I don't mean to be rude. I just don't. So if you're looking at scholarship and stuff, or if you can find someone who thinks Buddha may have not existed historically, or Muhammad, reach out, because I'm one man. I'm a one-man army. And Dr. Josh is right. I use an app called SynSpark, and I literally record a video that I could put in the email, and it stays up there so they could see it. And I put myself out there and I go, hello, Dr. So-and-so. My name is Derek Lambert. I'm the host of MythVision Podcast, and I would love to interview you on this topic from your book and promote your book, of course, get people acquainted with your material, blah, blah, blah. And thanks. Have a nice day. That's what I try to do. So I'm doing my damnedest, and I'm one man, and I got all this stuff going on with my granny, and then I got 3 monstrous kids that are inside this house and stuff like that. So your help is needed for MythVision Podcast, please. And appreciate that. Seriously. Trying to get Laura Robinson. I wrote her last night on Facebook, and I'm actually going to see this. Let me see. This Thursday. Nope. Yes. This Thursday, I'm going to see Ian Mills. So he's the New Testament podcast review. I think I'm saying that right. That's their channel. I'm going to see Ian Mills. He lives about an hour away from me, and interviewing him. So I'm trying. Laura Robinson, I wrote her last night. If you guys can get a hold of her, let me know. Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate that. Seriously. Please vouch to Laura. Tell her you have sent her an email. I've Messenger on Facebook, Twitter. I've wrote her on Twitter. She didn't see it there yet. But on Facebook Messenger, I wrote her again last night, and maybe I can tell Ian to whisper in her ear too. So yeah, I'm not interested in the flat earther stuff. So they're too historicist, Rochester said. I hope I said your name right there. I love historicists. I love both. I love all the sides of the coin I can get. And I've listened to him. I've learned a lot even from Ian in the short little clips and scholars that he studied, but I haven't actually studied all of them. So I'm interested in reading and learning. I'm not going to, close my ears to that for sure. Let me see what else I have coming up here real quick. So you guys are aware, on the 9th, I'm interviewing Dr. Richard Carrier, and we're going to be talking about scientists in ancient Rome, early Roman scientists, and also, did Christians value science more than pagans? That'll be an interesting topic, and that's going to be live, so you guys can come on, listen to Dr. Carrier live, and we'll take Q&A, of course. Super chats are always thanked and welcomed, of course, for questions. That'll be happening. I'm having Tim O'Neill on the 16th, and we're going to be talking about more stuff there. Derek Bennett will be coming on here soon. And Russell Gamirkin will be on the 12th of May. Like, I'm skipping ahead. Of course, the 5th of May will be Bart Ehrman. Shannon Q's coming on in May. She had to schedule way, way out. Other than that, all I have are Dr. Price videos that I've been doing and continuously doing. And I did 12 videos the other day with Dr. Robert McNair Price and Dragons in Genesis, Jason Folks, at Dr. Bob's. It's all on the Patreon. So whoever comes and joins the Patreon, you will have full access to everything I have on there, which is hundreds of videos. But we talked about a lot of things. Did you guys ever see my little advertisement for that? Let me see if I can pull up the picture here for you guys. Just trying to get more people aware of it. Here we go. Pulling up the promo now. About to share the screen. Let you guys see it. If you haven't seen it, so this is all the videos right here that I did with Dr. Price and Jason Folks. Like, one of them's like a huge thank you to Dr. Price. Did Jesus exist? They have that conversation. Satan, are there many Satans? Also, he works for God. Where did this idea come that he doesn't work for God? Oh, let me do this. There we go. All right. Now I'm bigger. Was Cain a good guy originally? That was one of the interesting things. And every one of these videos rabbit trails into this like other discussion, and it just keeps going deep. Enoch and the Book of the Watchers, Become a Critical Thinker, Religion, Warts and All is one of my favorite ones that we did. Dr. Price kills that one. It's like, that was really, really interesting. Like, if you think Christianity is bad and you want to poke at it, but I'm going to become a Buddhist, he goes, I would hold off before you make a judgment like that, because there are hundreds of Buddhist hells and demonology in the Buddhism and all that. It's Buddhism technically could be worse if you realize the totality of what Buddhism teaches, and there's various schools of thought of it. Dr. Price goes into it. I can't even begin. Best Bible movie, Mary equals Asherah, Persian influence on the Bible, which John J. Collins does agree that there's Persian influence on Judaism in the Bible, which is why I love to look at all of this stuff. So Hector Garcia, Dr. Hector Garcia, I don't know. You guys email me. Here is my email. I've got a couple different emails for MythVision, but if you have ideas of scholars, and you can like not just email me and say, hey, I'd like for you to check this out, but maybe give me some links or sources or something so that I can, be able to connect with some of these people and find out if they're interesting and have them come on. Here we go. There's my email. And you guys, please do email me. I'd be happy to contact these people because I love growing the channel and touching on new things. I want to do more in the Scientologist stuff. Trying to get Leah Remini and Mike Render from the show of the Scientology to come on and talk about that crazy cult. That's one crazy cult. Unbelievable. And that hope happens. Gonna send you so many weird pics. Dude, I've seen everything you have. You can't hide from me, bro. I know exactly what you look like beneath those clothes. Yeah. So Nathan, guys, Digital Gnosis, he's a good buddy of mine. I met him just this past recent year with delving into, listening to Pine Creek Doug, which I absolutely love listening to. He just will play a clip and think exactly what you and me are all thinking and point out some obvious funny things along the way. And Nathan was a Christian not too long ago, and he's come out of the closet in multiple ways. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, dude, Joel, can you get a hold of Lataster? Raphael Lataster. He's an agnostic on the position of mythicism, historicism. Did Jesus exist? I want to get him on. I wrote him a long time ago, and he kind of came back a little bit rude, I think, but he didn't know me from Adam. So see if you can help me, man. See if you can help me, bro. Reach out to him and let him know. Never forget that. We are MythVision. Hold on. Yes, absolutely, Gary. I've interviewed Lloyd 3 times now, 2-3 times on Jehovah's Witnesses. We did one on failed prophecies, how the church or the organization, don't use the word church because they'll get mad. The organization has, continuously pushed the date forward. And yeah, I've interviewed him. He's an awesome guy. Be great to see her on. Someone talked about getting, what was her name? Elaine Pagels on. And I've emailed her. I emailed her again recently. Hopefully she'll join me. But she did respond to me a while back, and we never set up a date and got a show going. I want to talk about the origins of Satan. I want to talk about a lot of this Gnostic material and, just learn a lot from her. She's obviously well educated on the topic. Let me see something. Derek, Ross, and Carrie. Oh no, Ross and Carrie have participated in several religious groups and respond. Email me. Dude, you have, hold on, let me see. Here we go. Dude, you have by far the most, let's say, sober show on these topics I have seen anywhere. I'm like, you entertain the wacky, but keep a straight head. Serious kudos. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. I've actually had that Jesus guy on, and everyone's like, how did you not laugh? Someone thought I was ending the show. Nathan. So people are like, how did you not laugh interviewing Jesus from Australia? Look, I had Dr. Price next to me. Dr. Price is a professional on how he presents himself. And I am also not a rude individual. Like, I'm not going to mock you and laugh in your face, though I almost did break down laughing a few times in the show. I mean, he literally, I asked him where Joseph Smith was in the afterlife, in the spirit world. And he's like, I don't know. Let me ask. And then he turned his eyes and he goes, he's in the third ring of hell, which hell to him is not the same as hell to a Christian or someone like that. But I said, dude, did you just ask like the spirits? And he's like, yeah. Part of me wanted to just go like, are you kidding me? Dude, you just did that on video. Like, really? And then the other part was when I told him, I was like, look, you say all these other Jesuses that claim to be Jesus are overcloaks. But could you be overcloaked with the spirit in your own worldview? No, I don't change. I just is so obvious to me, and he can't perform miracles. So that was a big, thing. Like, dude, open my book right now on my desk. I'm not touching it. Just open the page. And I'd be like, yo, this guy's got telepathic powers or something. He can't do nothing. Thank you for sending that message, Joel. Appreciate it. Someone said the interview made me think you would be a good actor. Look, I seriously told the guy on the phone that I don't believe that he's Jesus, and I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in Jesus. But I would love to. I said I'd be polite. I won't mock you. He goes, I don't care if you disagree with me, but I'll have a lot of questions. And one of the big catches, guys, if you haven't seen that video with the Jesus from Australia, this is the problem I ran into. This guy wants to take over the conversation to a point where if you cut him off, he'll feel like you didn't allow him to elaborate every detail, nook and cranny, how many hairs are on your head and how many kids went to school that Saturday, when I just wanted to know if you rose again from the dead physically in the first century. And he goes off into La La Land, and I'm trying to keep him on track. And so the interviews get real boring and bogged down if I don't try to do that. But you saw the reaction in the next video I did where he was acting like, I talked to a couple people who've dealt with this guy before, this AJ Miller from Australia, and they all say the same thing. Like, he does this on purpose to play the victim and act like he's right and everyone else is wrong. And so I saw the true colors of this guy, really weird, passive aggressive, strange cult leader guy. And man, there's so much I would love to explore with that, but I'm hoping to get a hold of a few people that were in his cult that can come out and point out, like, this guy he needs to see a mental, hospital, something seriously wrong with this guy. I already knew that something was wrong with him, but I'm talking like he's caused a lot of pain and heartache for a lot of people. Get John Cleese. Please email me, Blue Green. I would love to know more about these people, if you don't mind. So please email me. Said he's busy with Jesus. Let's see. Yeah, dude, I would love that, Aaron. The problem is I don't think Jesus would stay on the show. I had this talk with what is his name? I can't even think right now. I had a talk with another guy who does epistemology, street epistemology, and he's like, dude, I'd get this guy so mad so quick just by my questions, not even like trying to criticize him, but by asking further questions, probing, that he would just get sick and walk away. And the Jesus guy told me on the phone, AJ from Australia, before we did the show, if you're too rude, I'll just walk off the set. I told my buddy David Samuel's the one who helps like put things like this together sometimes. And I said, dude, let's get him back on the live. Even after he was rude to me, I wanted to do another live with him. He refused to do the show with me until we corrected our errors and our ways by action toward him, almost like kiss his ass is pretty much what he's saying. And he wouldn't join us on the show. But I told David that if he came on that live, he would end up walking off that live because I wasn't going to play Mr. Nice Guy the second time go around. I was going to really epistemologically probe into him and make him like realize why I'm skeptical of everything he's saying. But it never happened. Andrew Loke. Bro. I guess I could, but it would just be like the typical apologetic. It's like talking to an apologist, just simply doing that. But I wouldn't mind doing it. I got a guy, that Hindu guy that's on Aaron Ra's show that they just had like an argument recently or were discussing back and forth. He wants to come on the channel. But I'm just going to pull epistemology at this point and really probe why he thinks he's right. That's really what I would do. Faithful theology. Oh, where go? Things just jumped. Where did I go? There we go. Faithful theology. I am a reasonable, honest person. Email me. We'll talk some details. We'll discuss some details. But I appreciate you hanging out in the live. I know you're a Christian. I saw that earlier. And would love for you to email me and we can discuss topics maybe for a potential show in the future. Any chance of having Stephen Holler on? Also, any plans of having Dean Boswell back? I would love to get Boswell back. I can write him. And Stephen Holler, I think we were supposed to do a show and we never made it happen. But I think he's wrote in the Journal of Higher Criticism before. Look, Shannon Q, what's up? Shannon is coming on in May, ladies and gentlemen. And I've been reading more on consciousness and the mind, or Dr. Shermer doesn't like using the term mind because it can carry a nuanced meaning. It can mean multiple things. The brain, consciousness from the brain. And we're going to delve into that. I've got some books. She's given me a reading list, and I'm going to try and do my best to get those read so I don't look like a complete idiot, Shannon, when you come on. I hope. Let's see. Steven says it's central. The whole shows. You want to get Loke on to trigger him. If Loke talks to you and not Paul, I'm gonna flip my shit. Look, I actually, I've got Mike Lacona's contact. I could probably write Mike Lacona and set up a discussion. I don't know if Lacona would even come on with Paul, but Paula Gia, for everybody who doesn't know, Shannon Q and Paula Gia are dating. If you didn't know that, please don't send dick pics to her anymore. Saw that on Facebook, by the way. Yes, that happened. Yes, guys, we're a weird species of people. Just guys are strange. It's like, I don't know why we think that's something that women want to see. Yeah. They fear Paul. Yeah, I know. Paul's too, dude, I'm going to be real right here on the show, Shannon. I wouldn't want to mess with Paul. He would like meticulously put together this cartoon, and it's a cartoon response video. And I just would prefer to stay on Paul's side. He's just too anal about the details that he knows what he's doing. He spends like, he told me like 50 hours to edit one video. I think he knows what he's saying when he gets done putting that video together. So anyone who's going to try to challenge him needs to know that they better have their crap together. Don't just throw it together, because you're going to end up looking like an idiot if you challenge Paula Gia. Your video is going in and out, bud. You deserve Pepsi for the comment. Someone said they won't watch Andrew Loke. Would you watch Andrew Loke if a skeptic is challenging Andrew Loke or asking him, to, prove some of his points? I'm going to go ahead and exit this here, guys. That was the Patreon thing. I think I would. I saw Shannon's post, Joel said, on Facebook, and some men are twisted. My wife gets those sometimes too. So don't worry, Shannon. I totally understand how weird men are. I'm trying. Richard Dawkins, I'm trying, guys. I want to get him on. Seriously. If I could get Richard Dawkins on, man, that would be just awesome. Seriously, awesome. Have you guys seen that Richard Dawkins opens love mail, but it's really hate mail from Christians on YouTube? That is one of the funniest email reading videos I've ever seen. His part 1 and part 2 of Christians like condemning him to hell. From my post in heaven, I will watch you torture. Like, oh my God, I think that's so hilarious. Paula Gia is God level status on YouTube. That's a fact. That is like evolution. That's a fact. Period. I swear you've asked Dr. Bob every question I have. I'm sure you can come up with more. I'm pretty sure you can come up with more. Put some more in your mind together and then email them to me. I'm constantly going over to Dr. Bob's. I only just found out that Paul worked on loads of comics. He was on that Deconverted Musicians podcast. I forgot the channel. I don't know. I don't know what channel you're talking about. Please get me hooked up with some scholars, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an hour and a half. I've been hanging out. I just wanted to let you guys know I entertain people who are fringe in fields of research. Sure, I myself am truly teachable, absolutely willing to go where evidence leads me. And I want to get more mainstream scholars in the field of biblical studies and things like that. And I understand the hesitation. This whole video was brought up because I had an email from someone that I really highly respect that is a very skilled scholar in the language of Hebrew and, of course, biblical studies on dating the Hebrew Bible and stuff. And he politely gave me some words of advice. And he said, your website, it doesn't seem that well professionally put together, and that, it seems like you'll probably have a hard time getting some of these scholars to come on because there are so many fringe scholars and topics you've brought onto your channel. It'll be difficult for you to acquire more consensus mainstream scholars to your channel. And I get that. And I ask for anyone, maybe you can refer them to this live. I ask that, you consider me as a host. Ultimately, I understand I've had past broadcasts with people. Shoot, they see me interview Jesus from Australia and how nice I was. They may not want to come on. But as a host, I ask someone who's, teachable and wanting to know more and to educate the general public to please consider, getting on the channel and let me interview you, because I really am interested in what the mainstream scholarship has to say, so that, hey, if these fringe theories are wrong, please let's cut out what's wrong and focus on what's true, and see why they're incorrect. I kind of did everything backwards. So that's something I ask for you guys and anyone watching this to do. And be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for the shows that we have coming, because I want to do more. Let's see. Oh, did you see me doing that? It's the little dental floss thing. I was like, and make sure. Yeah, I've got my little dental floss thing here. I haven't used it yet, though, so that might help for those who have germ issues. Ladies and gentlemen, please email me, all these scholars, you guys. Like, email me, Marcus, Vincent, please. Oh man, Jay is so insecure. Jay who? Oh my gosh, please, Paul James. If someone can get her, like, I'll roll the red carpet out. You know what I'm saying? She's serious. She's serious. I talked to Dr. Bowen about this. He had her on his channel, and I can't even begin to pronounce her last name right now, which I'd have to prep if I was going to do a show. But really enjoy her. Want to get her on this channel on the field of Old Testament studies. I've always wanted to ask her if she thought Jesus could have possibly not existed, just because that's where I was coming from. But yeah, see if you can get a hold of some of these big names. And I know that it might cost, some of them may have a budget, or it might take a budget in order to make that possible. I want to put together, before I go, guys, I want to put together like a GoFundMe on traveling to go interview some scholars. It's going to take flight costs, things like that. I'm going to put some of that stuff together, and that'll be an option for people who are wanting to see that happen. And because I don't have the funds myself to just do that. But let me know if there's anything you particularly want to invest in to make that happen or something. Let me know. But other than that, reaching out to these people and steering them my way is going to be super important. And I'm off. I'm going to get off because you guys keep hanging out here. That's awesome. I have a Discord. Go join the Patreon. See all the videos I have with all the scholars. And I'm going to get off and go get some food in my stomach. I love you guys. Be on the lookout. Shannon Q, thanks for joining me. Nathan, Joel Pierce, everybody, everyone, all the super chats, everyone who's brought up stuff, and just being here on MythVision Podcast. I'm super thankful for all of you and learning from everyone who comes on. So thank you so much. And don't ever forget, we are MythVision.